Scotty, you gonna be listening in? Of course, baby. I just saw you over there and I had to say something. We're rolling right now, but I'm talking to a guy behind me. Is that cool? Or no, it's probably not cool. Okay. Whoa, what's up? Um, I hope everyone enjoyed the Jackie Lee podcast. It was our first. Um, Couple things. I think I could have been better at introducing Jackie, kind of understanding who he was as an individual, and doing a what's those things called? Like where I introduce him. Um, yeah, just an introduction. Sorry. Um, but yeah, should have done it better with that, and we're gonna do better with that moving forward. Of kind of understanding that way, you guys have a little bit of an understanding who our guests are. But anyways, today it's just Spence. It's just me. So you're stuck with me for about 45 minutes. I didn't get a word out with Jackie because he just talked the whole time. So now it's my turn. It's my podcast, so I get to do whatever. Um, you're not going to be hearing me drink my coffee this whole time, I promise. But anyways, today's a crazy week. Today's a crazy day because of our crazy week. My little daughter started school for the first time. Which is just nuts to me. I felt like just yesterday I was packing a lunchbox and complaining of what was in my lunchbox, and now I'm packing my daughter's lunchbox, which is just the wildest thing in the world. I did get my Murfreesboro store closed. Not closed, sold. Sorry. And that was awesome. At the 11th hour. So I was working on that negotiation for about, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months. It went fairly quick, don't get me wrong, but 2 days, 3 days before we were supposed to close, that's probably exaggerating. I think it was like a week. A week before we were supposed to close, he backed out of the deal. So he literally looked at me and was like, I'm retracting my offer. And I think the moral of that story was I wanted to blow his brains out. I was so mad. But what I've learned in business is that 24-hour rule, right? Where emotionally you can't really be hasty with emails, text, phone calls, right? And that's just good in anything, not just business and relationships in general. But I was so mad, and I was with my brother on the golf course. And my brother, if you know my little big brother, Seaton, he's pretty good at holding grudges. He's pretty good at he's basically he's just loyal. He saw how that hurt me and what selling that location was going to do for me and my family financially. And so Seaton was like, let's go kill him. Right. I probably shouldn't say that on a podcast, but he was obviously joking, but that's just the tension that had built up via email. And I was like, Seaton, it's all good, man. I think at the end of the day, good Lord's kind of got a purpose for all this, and I hate this. He's kind of put me in a pickle, but here we go. So I didn't respond. I sent it to my franchise immediately, and then I responded 24 hours later with so much love and just compassion, and just said, listen, there's been things in my life where I'm such a people pleaser to where I followed through with things that I knew in my gut I probably shouldn't do, whether it be financially or whether it be relationally, or just in business in general. I've made decisions on how those people across the table were going to think about me rather than what was best for my family. And I felt like regardless of why he was walking away from the deal, that maybe that's where he was. And so I politely sent him an email saying, hey, brother, you've put me in a pinch. However, I respect someone that can get to the 11th hour and pull away, even though from a business standpoint, business ethically, you're all the things that are going through my head, right? I just chose love and kindness, and I just said, whatever you choose to do forward, I'm still rooting for you. I can separate my business brain and my personal brain. However, I hope you reconsider. Love, Spence. I got an email back probably within an hour saying, I've been on the phone with the franchise, appreciate you. I think I'm going to try to figure this out. I guess the moral of the story is don't ever send those emails. I've done it, text. Man, when your heart rate's at 100,000, just chill out. Wait 24 hours. Don't read into it, right? Because you're gonna be probably overthinking the whole situation and be like, if I wait 24 hours, then something else could go wrong or right in between them. I do need to get back to them. And it's like, no, 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 you don't. It's all good. Be patient. And we'll talk about that a little bit more today. But that's what's going on in my world. He came back to the table. He ended up buying it by the grace of God. And I'm so thankful. It's pretty surreal. I'm just 2 locations now, like I talked about early on. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about my last 6-7 years. And that's kind of what today's about. But I have that going on. My daughter started school. I cut myself shaving this morning, so it looks like I got this nice little red spot on my face. What else is going on with me? We have a show this week. So all the music stuff that I'm doing. So we have a show Thursday night. With Angel Oak, we have a writer's camp going on right now in the space where I'm sitting. There's just a lot going on. But I think that's just Satan kind of just throwing a bunch at me to make sure I don't do this. And I feel extremely called to do this right now. And I want to do this podcast, and I feel so good about it. But a lot going on, but I am consistently trying to rid some things off my plate and focus on the thing that I enjoy doing, love doing. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at. So anyways, today is more or less, I gave a talk. Where did it go? So I gave a talk back in November, I think. That should help me find it. But anyways, long story short, I did a talk in November with a bunch of business folks, and I'm just going to walk you guys through it, kind of what was said. And we may break this into 2 different podcasts depending on how long this goes. It was about an hour talk, so when I prepare for speeches, I obviously over prepare, so I have plenty of content. I don't want to under prepare. And so there's a lot of content here in these notes if I can find them and pull them back up. Okay, sweet. So here we are. So I pulled it up. Basically, in my notes, it's funny. It just says November talk. And so I'm just going to walk through this. And more or less, the only thing I know to do when I give talks, I think I should be better at this and have specialized content to where maybe I give a talk on adversity. Maybe I give a talk on financial stress or whatever that is, and maybe name it. Maybe that'll help me in the future. But every time I'm asked to speak, I typically just talk about where I'm at. I think that's the easiest way to give speeches, and it's because it's so relevant to what I'm going through. And so that's basically how I outline this. It's one of one. Every talk that I've ever given is one of one. I don't just copy and paste. I think a lot of good speakers do that, and I think that's probably the recipe. However, I have not mastered that. So this was a talk that I gave back in November, and emotionally I was still kind of distressed with everything going on. And so I really didn't talk about it publicly other than if you were sitting in those seats at this business summit. So I'm just going to walk through kind of what I said. So basically, I talk a little bit about who I am at most talks. You guys know that already, but we're just kind of get to the content. And the first thing that I said for most young entrepreneurs, and I think that's what the summit was about, just young entrepreneurs wanting to be entrepreneurs, business folks, starting out, I think. And you could be any age. That's not based off of age. That's just based off someone wanting to start out. And I think for me, period, truthfully, one of the hardest things for me to overcome was the timeline of everything. Just having patience. I was 24 years old when I opened up my first restaurant. Grew it to 4 restaurants by the time I was 30 or 29. And I still felt like I was behind. I still was chasing someone. I wasn't financially where I wanted to be. I didn't have as many restaurants as I wanted. And that's just a dangerous, scary, weird place to be. And so what I would tell every entrepreneur that's thinking about opening a business or wanting to open a business, forget the timeline. I think I said, I need you to lose all track of time. treat it like a sports game. Stop at halftime to look up and look back at your last 5 years. Stop again at 10 and do the same. But other than that, I need you to never think about time. Truthfully. It is the one thing that every business owner that discourages and distracts us. Period. You're going to consistently look at your bank account. You're going to consistently think about where you thought you should be, or you're consistently going to look up and look around and see where your friends are. And it's the one thing that's not just going to discourage you, but it's going to distract you. So lose track of time. I said treat it like a basketball game. I agree with that, or any sports game, whatever your thing is. I think it's healthy to look back at the 5-year mark and see how far you've come. I think that's a positive way to review where you've been. But the idea that you're going to consistently start comparing yourselves to everyone around you, to everyone in your field, it's just not ideal. And so the number one thing that I would tell you is, my dad looked at me and he said, Spence, if you sold out to your business for 5 years, you'll have a proof of concept, I guess. Like your business won't go anywhere. And, selling out to him was I think it was 5 years. It was a long amount of time. At 24 years old, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, 5 years of selling out to my business. What does that mean? Whatever it took. Like you had to say no to a lot of things. And then if you could get through those 5 years, then maybe, just maybe you have a business and now you can hire people and you have enough financially means to bring in other folks around you. But the timeline is the number one discourager. So I would say, if you're thinking about starting a business, forget the timeline. Fast is slow, slow is fast. And when it comes to sculpting you and your company, we overestimate what we can do in 5 years and we underestimate what we can do in 10. So where do you want to be in 10 years, right? So that's the question you got to ask yourself, not 5, like 10 years. Give yourself a long amount of time. Like in 10 years from now, where do I want to be? Do I want financial freedom? Do I want to 10x, 5x, 10x my company? Or if it's an emotional thing for you. For me, it was changing people's lives, raises, see your staff buy homes, get new cars. That was fun for me. And those were the things that kept me going when maybe I did decide to look up and got distracted based on my financial status or what my friends were doing or how successful they were becoming. I was still looking at the people around me and knew that we were doing something right because they were able to buy homes. They were able to get new cars. And that helped me. So that's the timeline piece. And then you got your 10 years, right? I said, don't worry about next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. At the 5-year mark, look back and see how far you've come, but really focus about where you want to be in 10 years and then take a deep breath and take it day by day. So how do you get there? And I think that was the first segment of this talk was basically just my first 4 years in business and then my last 4. And the first 4 years was kind of just, a big old learning curve, really. And it was more emotional than it was technical. Meaning, my humility, trying to figure out who I was as an individual inside business. If I didn't know who I was, then my business sure as heck wasn't going to thrive. Jelly Roll, I heard him talking the other day, and he basically said, when I became a better husband, my career got better. And I think that's one of the things that my first 5 years of business was figuring out who I was outside of business. What kind of individual was I going to be? And yeah, that was just a big piece of it. So, the first 3 years, these are the non-negotiables in my humble opinion. I don't think there's another way. I think there's tons of other ways, but I think these are non-negotiables. I think these are just a piece of the puzzle. There's a big puzzle that I think goes into your first 2-3 years of business. However, I would tell you that these are non-negotiable. I would say if you don't possess these, you have very limited chance of making it. The studies say 40% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. And I understand why. So we talked about humility. You learn this early. If you want to own your industry, I need you to own it here first, right? Like in your heart. I think for me, I felt way bigger than Pepsi refills and being the pizza boy early on in my career. And it showed, right? I wasn't humble enough to get out in my dining rooms. I wasn't humble enough. I just felt bigger than that. And, my mom and dad, we had this poster or this board in our kitchen growing up, and it was basically just like, humble yourself or life will do it for you. And my first 2 or 3 years in business was just a humility check. My job was to walk in every day and make myself feel this small and everyone around me feel this big. Um, I think it's a Maxwell quote, but he said there's people in this world that walk into rooms and say, "Here I am," and then there's people in this world that walk in and say, "There you are." And I think I was a "here I am" guy for the first 2 or 3 years of my business because I wanted to be this big bad entrepreneur and restaurant owner and make $1 bazillion and all these things. And it just never panned out. I mean, people kind of saw right through it. And so I think now I've tried, I'm not perfect at this, to be a there you are kind of person, right? Find the people in the room and tell them something good about themselves and be genuine and genuinely care about everyone around you. And I think that's a big, big part of, the book Win Friends and Influence People, right? It's a big part of business. And I think if you don't get the humility piece right, it's going to be extremely hard for you. I'm not saying there hasn't been some arrogant assholes become billionaires, because there has been. I just don't necessarily think that's the best way to do it. And I think it's a lonely route to the top as well. But I think humility is a big one. I think you have to get your business and social metrics right. I think you have to be disciplined. And sacrificing a social life for me was in my head because I do like to have fun and be with my friends, and I would consider myself fairly social. I think for me, it was my mom would always tell me this is a no for now, not forever. And I think you got to do what most people, we've all heard this, it's pretty cliche, but it's always in the back of my mind. We've got to do what most people won't do so we can live a life that most people can't. And I think for me, it was extremely hard at 24 to switch gears and to have to say no to all my friends, for just a drink at 8 or 9. I'm not saying go out and party till 3 a.m. Just some days I was cutting veggies, if not all the time, cutting veggies at 3, 4 a.m. and closing the restaurant at 1 a.m. I mean, there's, I shouldn't say 3, 4. We're cutting the veggies at 5 a.m. and closing the restaurant at 1 because we were open at 1 a.m. for our first restaurant. And there's just no way around it. There is no way to have a social life if you want to be successful, and the metrics has to get right. It doesn't mean you completely exclude it, you guys. It's important to keep your friends in the loop. It's important to date. It's important to have a life outside of business. However, if you don't get the metrics right, it is extremely tough, and it's not forever. And what I learned too in those early years was they quit asking. For me as a people pleaser, the hardest part for me was having to tell people no. It wasn't the act. I knew that I physically probably couldn't do it. I was busy. I couldn't go have a drink. I couldn't go to a game. I couldn't go to this and that. But me constantly having to say no to my friends was extremely tough on me, but it gets better. They just get it. They understand the season you're in, and they just quit asking. Doesn't mean that they've dropped you off. Because there's so many of my friendships that I have today that we both just kind of had to part ways for those 3 or 4 years and then rekindle and come back to the table and be like, yeah, man, I had to do what I had to do for those 3 or 4 years to get my company and my business where it needed to be. So I think, I think that's a big piece of it. To make it simple on myself, I always say you can have 3 of these things, but never all 4. Your health, family time, social life, or your company. And every season has a rhythm, and all are important. You are the 1%. Quit trying to make it easy on yourself. Business is simple, but it's never easy. And I think that's the metrics. No one ever looked at you and said opening up a business or being an entrepreneur was going to be easy. They never told you that. This is the hard part. Discipline. Having some sort of metrics to say, I can. I'm not saying you don't do it at all. I think it's healthy to take your vacations early on in your career. I think it's healthy to go out with your friends. I think those are all great things. But there's a lot more no's than there are yeses. I will tell you that. And you have to understand that early on. A third thing that I really struggle with, and I could talk about this for hours, but I walked into my company with two things. I said I was going to treat people really well and I was going to work really hard. And if I treated people better than most and I worked harder than most, then everything was going to be okay. And that worked when I did. There wasn't a lot of systems and processes in place. I had no idea. I knew how to read a P&L. I had to, but the money's coming in and coming out. I was pretty much illiterate. And that became one of the biggest pitfalls and the hardest part for me when we started losing money. Because it took me a ridiculous long amount of time to figure out not necessarily where the loss was happening, although that took longer than it should because I never really looked at a P&L. I just was living high on the hog my first 3 or 4 years. I knew we were making money. I knew I was paying off debt, and I was going to work every day, and it all worked out. But I didn't take time in my early years when we were small to figure out everything, not just the stuff you're good at. When you're small, leverage the smallness of it all, and the stuff that you don't necessarily want to do, you're going to hire for those roles later on in your career in your company. But when you can't afford it, take the time to figure it out and not just be the CEO, but also the CFO. And that was one of the biggest detriments to my career in year 4, year 5. And I can say that without a shadow of a doubt. It took me long to figure out where the money was going wrong, or going missing. But I think beyond that, it took me a ridiculous amount of time to fix it and to figure out what needed to be done to get cash back into our bank accounts. And that was a big deal for me. So don't just be the CEO. Be the CFO too. And if you're the CFO and you're a numbers guy, be the CEO guy, right? Understand how to lead a team. If you're the numbers guy, understand not just the numbers, but also, how to lead a team emotionally and not just sit behind a desk all day. I was the complete opposite. I was the one that was a rah-rah-ree, everybody, let's go out and win every single day. But when it came to the numbers and the financials of our company, I was relying on other people. And when they started not doing it correctly, this is another thing that I ran into about year 5, when my books weren't being done correctly. I had no idea. So I thought we were making all this money, but it wasn't showing up in the bank accounts. When we were overpaying on taxes for 3 years, 2 years, close to 3 years, my company overpaid about $250,000, $300,000 in taxes. I never caught it. You guys are like, Spence, whoa, yeah. That's the crap I was dealing with year 5 because I was just kind of illiterate. I looked at a bottom line. I said, hey, we're making money. Great. Okay, we didn't make that much money this week. Okay, I'm going to go look at my food and I'm going to go look at my labor. I looked at the biggies, but there was money sliding through the cracks everywhere. So when you start losing money, you start getting good at that. And that's why we're as healthy as we are today, is because, I had to go find every dime when we started losing money and the bank account started being saturated. Richard Branson, his recipe for success is open a business, hire the best people in the world to run that business, and give them the best resources to run that business. That's great and all if you have the financial means to get those resources, to get those people. And that's my point. Understand your numbers, your books, know where every penny is going, coming and going. Because if that's the truth, because Richard Branson's been pretty freaking successful, and I do love that recipe, there's a day where you can't afford the resources or the people. So you have to know everything. And don't neglect it just because you're making money. What if I told you you could be making double now if you just take a peek at your P&Ls? You could be paying off double the debt that you are if you could just be taking a peek at your P&Ls. Money matters. You got to have it. And if you're going to get the right people, the best people, they want to be paid. And if you're giving them the best resources, it's going to cost you money. And I think those are big, big pieces early on. Be humble. Get your social work metrics right. And 360, baby. Marketing, CFO, CEO. When you're small, learn it all the best you can. When you're small, learn it all. That's so cliche, and I hate that. But you'll remember that. Learn it all. You will hire for those positions. You're not always going to do it all. You don't want to do it all. Trust me, I tried. Um, Another thing that I would say the first 3 or 4 years is you've got to be available. I had my number on an A-frame on my first restaurant, asking them how their experience was. So my first 3 years in business, my number and my name was on an A-frame as soon as you walked into our first restaurant. I just kept myself available. And, I was in pizza, and one of the beautiful things about pizza is that we can serve a lot of people in record time. And a lot of times when you're a team or you're a church, you don't want to call and talk to, little Susie. It's her first day and try to order 60 pizzas. Maybe you want a little bit of a discount. And by the time, and you're in a pickle, you're in a pinch because the food fell through. But you had Spence's cell phone number, and you could text him and you could call him. And for the most part, you could depend on him to get things done and when it needed to be done. So I think your first 3 or 4 years, availability is massive. Pick up the phone. People have got to trust you. And you've got to be able to be reliable, not just with your customers, but with your staff. When things go awry, you're developing trust right now. If your staff doesn't trust you, if your community, if your customers don't trust you, man, nothing says trust like, hey, call me if you've had a bad experience. Call me if you need pizza in record time. I think availability is a massive thing early on in your career, and I think it's a non-negotiable. Make yourself available to your team and to your customers. And yes, is it going to backfire at times? And are you going to have to cut back on the availability year 5, year 6 like I did? Absolutely, y'all. I had more people texting me for free pizza than anything. But for the first 4 or 5 years, it was a necessity. It was a part of it. I wanted them to know that I was here to take care of them, and you could access me anytime you want. How easy can the consumer get to your product? And for me, it was right through my cell phone. Whatever your business is, how easy can you make it on them to order, to use your product? For me, it was my cell phone, and I don't necessarily know. I think Bob Goff was the first person that kind of brought this piece up when it came to availability because of his book. He put his cell phone on the back of Love Does, and I thought that was so cool, and I used that in my business career, and I think it helped a ton. I wanted people to get to know me just as much or more than my product, and I think that's a big, big, big component. People don't do business with a product. They do business with people. We've heard that for a long time. And I think if you got to know me, you could get over the fact that maybe we messed up. We put mushrooms on your pizza when you didn't want to. You knew our heart was in the right place. We didn't intentionally mean to do anything, and Spence is going to fix it. I think that's a big component early on in business. Let them get to know you, and then you're allowed a couple more mess ups, I would say. But if they don't have that personal relationship with you, then it's easy for them to go, oh, whatever. I've heard about this pizza restaurant and it's all right, but, didn't do much for me. I'll move forward. But if they know me and they want to support me and they know you and they want to support you, then they're going to cut you a little slack. They're going to give you a little grace. Hey, I went the other night. I'll be honest with you, Spence. I waited entirely too long for oh my gosh, next time call me. Back to the availability piece. Next time, call me. Call me. I'll place your order for you. As a matter of fact, I'll walk it to you. I'll deliver it to you, right? And so I think that was another big piece. So we'll walk back through these, and there's one more, and then we'll cut this up, and then we'll do year 5 through 7 on another podcast. I think that's the healthiest, best way to do this. But yeah, this is year 3 through 5 non-negotiables, I would say, in business. And these are all pretty standard. I mean, I'm not really illuminating any of you. I think it's just a great reminder. So we said, let's see here. Humility is the number one. Be the CEO as well as the CFO. Learn it all when you're small. You must be available. And then the last piece is, instead of being scared of what you don't know, leverage it. What do I mean by that? I think one of the things that most young entrepreneurs, or any entrepreneur, young or old, I think the hardest part for them to get over is I don't necessarily know any of it. I think or not know any of it. That's silly to say. you're scared of the stuff that you don't know, or you're scared of what might or might show up that you weren't prepared for. And I would just tell you that is business every single day. And what do I mean by leverage it? I was so young and naive. If I would have known, truthfully, if I would have known what entrepreneurship actually was when I was 24 years old, I'm not so sure I would have done it. I think you leverage the naivety of it all when you're young, when you don't have it all figured out, and you jump anyways. Because what I would tell you is later on in life, you do have family, you do have kids, and your risks are a lot more calculated. They have to be. But when you're young and you're going into business, don't let the stuff that you don't know or the youth of it all scare you. I would say leverage it. I would say I am young and dumb. Let's go. And if I don't know it, I'll figure it out. But I'm going to work harder than everyone. And I'm going to treat people better than anyone. And then I'm going to learn it all. Right? So I think those 5 things are fairly non-negotiable. I think you stay curious through it all. You be curious through it all. Those are the biggest things that I would tell you. You're not going to know how to do it. But I think if you're just curious how it all works, why did this customer show up today? Why is this employee sticking around longer than they thought? Why? Just stay curious. You're going to learn so much. You're going to learn so much, and it's a massive crash course. But do not let the fact that you don't know what the hell you're doing be the reason that stops you. I'm just telling you. I knew nothing about the restaurant industry. Absolutely nothing. That's why I franchised. I kind of got a little bit of a cheat sheet there. And quite frankly, I didn't know anything outside basketball on how to really lead a team. I would say I was a natural leader in some arenas, but I had no idea what I was going up against. Leading 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids for the last 8, 9 years. I mean, obviously we've had adults in our space, but for the most part, it's just been first jobbers and young kids. And I had no idea. And I think if you would have told me what I didn't know, I wouldn't have done it. And that's my point. My point is, it's okay if you don't know it all. If it's okay if you don't know what the future holds. It's okay if you don't know how you're going to pay the bills next month. But here's what I know about every entrepreneur is they figure it out. And that's my challenge to every entrepreneur. This thing is not easy. It gets better, but you got to figure it out. And you will figure it out. The good ones do. My back's been, and quite frankly, I think that I operate better with my back against the wall because I'm forced to make decisions, quick decisions. I'm forced to rely on my experiences in the last 8 years, and those tend to lead me well rather than overthink something and try to think out of the box when really, like, no, this needs to be a quick, to the point, brash decision needs to be made right now to get our company back on track. So, humility, got to be available, learn it all, be disciplined, get your business social metrics right. And that was my first 4 years in business. And then I guess year 5 through 7, you guys are going to just have to wait for. But I think those are just non-negotiables. Those are easy. I feel like they're just layups. Be available for people. Learn it all. Be humble. And don't let the stuff that scares you be the reason, or the stuff that you don't know be the reason you don't start. None of us knew all of it. None of us knew probably a fraction of what we were about to learn in the next 5, 6 years to get good at this. But we all started somewhere. So maybe that helped, maybe it didn't. I knew I kind of wanted to get that out. This has been one of the most positive feedback talks that I had ever gotten back. So this was easy for me to come on and just talk about it. We'll cut this up and then we'll do year 5 through 7. And just as a prequel, 50% of small businesses fail within the next 5 years. So we talked about 40% fail the first 3, the following 5, 70 within 10 years, 75 in 15 years, and 80 within 20 years. And year 5 through 7, the overwhelming point is we can all do stuff that works, but what is going to last? And year 5 through 7 with me was, okay, I'd worked really hard. I tried to treat people really well, but now could I put systems and processes in to grow a company? And in a lot of ways, we did withstand $1 million deficit with those systems and processes. I just think those restaurants that we bought were a little too far gone. I wasn't able to turn those around, and I was able to keep them open for 4 years, three and a half, maybe 4 years, whatever. But what I learned through all that was where every dime was coming in and out, and systems and processes. And so we'll walk through that on the next pod, about what that was like as an extrovert that just wants to go do things rather than set up systems and processes to get them done. I would rather just go do them myself, and that was just such a challenging time. And then going out and find people to do the stuff that I didn't want to do, letting go of the rope a little bit, not micromanaging as much. That was extremely tough on me because I'd just done it all for 3-4 years. It worked. It wasn't going to last. And that's what we'll talk about in the next podcast. But anyways, thanks for listening. You guys are going to get this on Thursday. This is literally Tuesday. I mean, you're going to get this in 48 hours of me talking about it. I think it went over well. I don't necessarily think I communicated some things the best of my ability, but hopefully you guys took some stuff out of that. I'll be better, I think, year 5 through 7. But yeah, it's been a crazy week. I'll leave you guys with this because this is kind of cool. So this is the stuff that I would typically, when I was 24, I'd put on Facebook, and everyone would give me a high five and a clap, and I'd feel warm and fuzzy about. But I just want to be famous in my home now, and I think that I don't necessarily feel the need to do stuff, but for podcasts and not necessarily entertainment purposes, I think this is a cool thing. So we had a homeless guy that was out. I don't think he was, maybe he was homeless. I don't know. I'm not going to say his name, although I know his name now. We're pen pals. So, I have a lot of young girls working for me and women in general. And if you know anything about me, my pizza restaurant is here. My dad's pharmacy is right next to us. And, we had a strange man in the grass laying down one day. I think this was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I've always tried to do for the least of these the best that I could, but it got exhausting. And then when I got my own family, unfortunately I haven't been the best at it as seeking out after those folks that need my attention. But this one kind of got brought to me. I was in my office, and they were basically just saying, hey, some of the girls don't feel safe walking in. Can you go figure out what's going on over here? There's a guy laying down in the grass. And, for me, as I don't ever put my guard up on something like that. I think people are more human than they are homeless, and I just wanted to go get to know him and figure out where he was. I walk over there, and he is obviously kind of out of his mind. He had just left the hospital. He was waiting for the pharmacy to open, is what he told me. And so I go get his meds for him. He didn't have shoes on, so I grabbed him shoes out of my truck. I'm a big shoe guy, and I have a bunch of shoes, and so this was not too admirable of me. I had shoes that probably hadn't worn in 4 months. They're sitting in that truck. But however, those shoes were the ones that I ran the Ironman in. And so I gave it to him, and I said, dude, these are the Ironman shoes. And I said, so I don't know where you're headed, but I know you're going to get there. And we kind of hugged it out. I grabbed some deodorant from the pharmacy too and told him, he said, thank you, but in the best way he could. He really couldn't communicate a bunch. But then a week later, I get this in the mail, and I'm just going to read it to you guys, and I'll try not to cry. Hey, man, I'm sure you think... I'm going to try to get through this because it's not the best handwriting. Hey, man, I'm sure you think this is crazy, but this is the dude on the hill at Sheldon's Pharmacy behind your pizza place. That dude that you paid for my medicine and gave me them shoes. And then he told me his name. You don't know what you did that day and who you helped. I'm used to preach the word of God, and I was so far down and low that I almost gave up. Then I seen the light as I have the Lord Jesus came down and delivered me from alcohol, drugs. I'm currently in rehab at, I'm not going to say where. Thank you. Last night, this man's son was in critical condition, and I prayed. The anointing fell upon me, and this morning they took his son off the respirator and doing better. So remember that the Lord is good, and thank you. I am still wearing the Iron Man shoes. You never know who you're helping. Thanks. I'll come and get a pizza when I get out. Just a little light can go a long way. Pray for the ones who have gave up. Sorry about my handwriting. May God bless you and your whole household. I'll be preaching again very soon. So, very sweet. I think Nick and Mark just did a podcast about loving your neighbor, and those two guys do it really, really well. Nick Lawson and Mark Biggs. And, yeah, I think you just try to be where your feet are. And that goes back to the whole timeline and patience of business. Is I think sometimes you make it about yourself too much and where you want to be financially, and you forget to love on the people that are in front of you. And those are the things that's going to build a foundation for a business. For me, it just happened to be the homeless guy in my parking lot that day. But a lot of times it's your staff and it's your customers. Be present. Quit being so worried about what tomorrow, next year, next month's going to look like that you forget to love on the person right in front of you. And that was just my story about that, and I'm proud of him. I pray that we keep going. I obviously wrote him back, and so I'm anxious to continue that journey, and I will keep, let's just call him Matt. And so we'll keep up with Matt's journey, and maybe he'll come out on the other side. But love you guys. Have any questions or concern? Obviously, would love for you guys to like, share, follow, subscribe to the Just Spence podcast. We're just getting started. I'm hopefully going to get better at this. Hopefully you'll see that. So yeah, you guys enjoy yourself out there. Please come to the show. It's tonight. I guess this is going to drop the morning of. It's tonight at 7 p.m. at Capital Arts. Just tell them I sent you and you'll get in for free. That'll be cool. So just come and enjoy it. But yeah, love you guys. Year 5 through 7 is coming up next. And we'll talk about that next week. It'll drop on Thursday. Peace.